Hello, this is a Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheists Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. And I'm Joe Barnhart.
And I'm Larry Rhodes, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs. Today's topic is angry atheists. Why atheists have good reason to be angry. Are you angry? You don't look angry. But this will go into some of the reasons why you find that atheists sometimes do get angry in conversations and why they have good reason for that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a call-in show, so we'll have a few announcements. But if you would, look at the number on the screen and get your pen or pencil and paper, and we'll be glad to hear from you. Also, there's an email address, and talk with us.
Sure. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup group, often meeting at a bar or eatery somewhere locally here in Knoxville. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we even do karaoke. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria for happy hour and for food after the show with drink and conversation. You're certainly welcome to come and join us. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of the God Delusion standing upright on the table. That's what it looks like there. And as Matt Dillahunty of the Atheist Experience always says, everyone's welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Okay. Now, the Rationalists of East Tennessee have monthly programs and activities. Usually on the first and third Sunday mornings, they have a presentation by a very informed speaker and a clear-headed speaker who opens it up for discussion. And then on the fourth Sunday, they're going to have a potluck.
Very good.
In the afternoon, and then on the third Sunday, they're going to have an exception. Instead of having a lecture, they're going to have a regional picnic, and people would be invited to that too. So consult the.
Hopefully, the weather will cooperate. You can visit our websites for additional information and times and locations. I forgot to mention that the Atheist Society of Knoxville has started having meetups at Friday on the Knoxville, Beard and Beer Garden. It's for happy hour. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of this God Delusion standing up on the table, just like at the other place. But it's just, with the weather moderating, people feel like getting out more. The Beard and Beer Garden is an outdoor venue, so I thought we'd take advantage of it and celebrate the end of the week.
Okay, well, today's topic is why do some atheists get angry? Now, we're not talking about enraged.
No, I think it's more of a misnomer or a misconception that, I talked to him, he's an angry atheist, meaning that whenever you talk to one, they end up getting angry. Or maybe it's even that the Christians or the believers are angry and project their anger feelings on the atheist.
Both groups are human, yeah.
They're both human. We'll be taking calls during the course of the show. You can call in now at the number on the screen, 215-2288. There is a 7-second delay in the broadcast, so once you call, please mute your television and listen to us over the phone, or we will all be confused.
That's very important. I was once a caller entered the program, and I forgot to turn it down, and it created no enlightenment, but a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
But we would appreciate your interacting with us. Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that atheists understandably resent, and most people, regardless of their viewpoint, is they resent being misrepresented. Most of us like to have people to tell the truth about us, and if they don't know about us, then not try to represent us or not go by hearsay. We don't like to have our views misrepresented. For example, you often hear, and unfortunately some preachers are responsible for this, fortunately not all, that if you are an atheist, then you have no real basis for morality and And in many cases, you are immoral and amoral.
Like you need more of a basis than your common humanity and compassion for your fellow man. That's as much of a basis for morality as you really need. That and common sense.
Yeah, since you have to live with each other, then.
Not too long ago, you could still find dictionaries ready to define the word atheism as meaning immoral or evil, rather than what the etymology means. Atheist means, and theist is a person who believes in God. A is a person who doesn't believe in God.
Yeah, it's just the Greek alpha pivot. It means un.
If you're synchronous, you're in sync with something. If you're asynchronous, you're not. If you're moral, then you have good, positive morals. If you're amoral, you're without morals, not necessarily immoral, but it means without or not. A definition of atheist as evil is an attack on the atheists who have reached conclusions about gods and Jehovah, Osiris, Zeus, or Saturn. The definition of an atheist as evil is a knowing or unknowing slander. We're simply people who don't believe in God, but we're simply people and humans.
Which means that atheists can do some very good things and can do some very harmful things. It depends on the individual.
Yeah. I forget who said it, but it says that people in general will do good things and will do bad things. But it takes religion to get good people to do bad things.
Well, we'll have to admit there are some atheists who have used atheism to do bad, just as people use religion to do bad.
I'm not aware of any, but I'll take
Joe
your word
Stalin would be a good example.
Well, he didn't do what he did in the name of atheism, though. No. He did it in the role of Stalinism and his own personal dogma.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he did study in a seminary.
He did.
Too, so you can blame either way. But anyhow, let's get started on this.
Sure.
There was a philosopher of the 18th century. He died in 1804, I believe. So, Kant, K-A-N-T, who said that goodwill is unsurpassed as a moral principle. It's always good. And in a war, you might say there would be a time to lie under those terrible circumstances to save your life or someone's life.
Right.
But there's never a time, according to Kant, when you shouldn't have goodwill towards somebody. Even an enemy, you would want to make them a friend.
Right. It didn't take long to get our first caller today. Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
Agent 86.
Agent 86.
Okay.
Welcome to the show. Did you have a comment or question?
Well, I'm not really an atheist, but I am angry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this tax-free stuff is really getting under my skin. I live on the, well, I don't want to tell you what road I live on. I mean, got to keep secrecy and all. But I've got about a 5-mile road here. Maybe, no, not even that long. But it's got like 14 churches on it. I counted them. And I started thinking, well, that's a lot of money that goes off the tax base.
Yeah.
And it's just plain old property taxes, I believe, is what they're exempt from.
Right.
But if that wasn't bad enough, I was actually looking at the tax records, and I noticed one piece of property on North Shore, and it dropped down from paying $30,000 a year in taxes to $5,000. Come to find out, it was a convention center that had been put up by a church.
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure that even their other properties, such as business buildings and places like that, are not also tax-free, or maybe even apartment complexes, for all I know.
Right.
I don't think they are. But it really boils my bunny when I go to McDonald's and some fellow comes in and orders, 15 or 20 McGriddles to go, and he pays for it with a credit card and a church tax number. Or if it's somebody in Walmart getting a bunch of parties.
That's a good point. And not only do they save money on the property taxes, they also save money on the income of the preacher and the property that the preacher is living on. Now, I've also heard stories about they put up these big signs, and put up advertisements for their church, and sometimes also offers advertisement space to other people. They never pay income tax on the property for that either, or they can come from that. And that shifts the burden to normal people, which atheists are normal people, who have to pick up the tab for this.
Okay.
Not only that, but they can call the police for a break-in or a theft. They can call the fire department for a fire. They have to come out and do their thing with the fire, but they don't have any responsibility as far as a payment for those services. Or the roads they drive on.
The roads, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that is one reason to make us angry.
I wouldn't call and just gripe without I did not have a solution.
Okay.
Okay. Let's.
If anything, I'm positive.
Okay.
So here's my plan. 2 words: timeshare. We know how popular that's getting lately. Put up one little church here, one big church here on Topside Road, and on Fridays you come in and put the Jewish stuff up or Saturdays, and then on Sundays you put up the Catholic stuff. Then on Wednesdays you put the Baptist stuff, and just timeshare the thing. Mm-hmm. That way it's less of a burden on the rest of us.
That's a good idea, except I still don't like that idea because you're still giving them some tax exemption.
Well, I know, but you're mitigating it at least.
That's true. I'm all for taking the tax exemption away. There's no reason for it. They don't have any special rights in my eyes.
Well, also, I don't know, when somebody's standing in front of me in line at Walmart, and I said Walmart, but actually I never shop at Walmart. I should say some other store. But when they have that tax code thing coming up and all, I see all this stuff coming through, and they always do it furtively, kind of secretly. Here, cashier, here, look at this number.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to this, Joe?
Oh, no, I think it's been pretty well
thank you very much for your call.
Thank you for listening.
Sure. Oh, I'd like to ask you, if you're not already gone, how did you hear about the show?
I see it on the computer. I watch it every week.
And how did you hear about it? A friend?
Well, he just saw it
cool.
rather than heard it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your call in.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very good.
That's one good reason for atheists to be angry.
Well, it's the principle of fairness, and I know there are some religious people who think it's unfair. I mean, they have a principle of fairness, and they want to build bridges on this, and that's basic fairness. If you're going to have ethics, you at the heart of ethics is fairness. I mean, that starts with a family,
right,
which may be the root of where human ethics starts.
To be sure.
Anyhow.
Okay. Getting back to Kant, where were you going with that?
Well, Kant was trying to say, and then he said he was trying to talk to those who were theists, and he said, if you hold a belief in God, then you must ask yourself a question. If you think you hear the voice of God, is it moral?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if it is not moral, then you can know it is not the voice of God. And he was saying even Abraham should have known.
Right, he should have
that
known.
Was not the voice of a God.
Well, that's just it, and that's just another way that God cannot lose. In religion, when you're talking to a theist, they talk about, what about when God does this or God does that? He always has some excuse, always take 3 or 4 pages of apologetics to say, well, the reason he needed to do this was because of that. And even if somebody flies a plane into a building and kills thousands of people, you got 3 or 4 people who didn't die. See what God did? Isn't God great? That's just.
And sometimes I think many theists realize this is blasphemy. And in other words, when you start attributing horrors and atrocities to your deity, then that's more blasphemy than denying the deity.
So they're prevented by their very dogma from assigning anything that's negative to their God.
Yeah, anything that horrible.
Well, that's enlightening.
Just an elementary consistency.
Right. Talking about humanistic atheists, we stress moral imperatives of objectivity and truthfulness, like Kant did. And from this imperative derives such moral virtues as truthfulness, kindness, generosity, honesty, and dealing with others, and humility, rather than arrogance. I couldn't come out with the word. But that all derives from human compassion. You don't need anything more than that, and the natural world, and knowing how you wouldn't want somebody to kill you or harm you or steal your possessions. All you have to do is project that into to all the others in the world to know that you have a basis for society. You would outlaw that and punish those who break those laws.
You can see mothers teaching this, not Moses.
Right, mothers.
Moses' mothers would say, Aaron, how would you like somebody to treat you that way? And that's the golden rule.
Yeah. Atheists abhor the use of religion and scriptures to deprive women of their fundamental rights of self-determination, to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, according to their conscience, rather than some clergyman's version of what he thinks is best for them based on a 2,000-year-old text.
That's substituting one person's conscience for another.
Not only that, though, but it's very easy with this particular Bible and many holy books to hide your own bigotry behind the text of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Quran, Mormon. It does not serve the cause of elementary human decency and goodness. There's an old saying that says, you can diss anything you want to, but usually when you say that God is with you, it's because of your own personal prejudices and bigotries. And you can always find something in the Bible that will back it up.
The Bible's a very big book, and so you can pick and choose. It's interesting. Many evangelicals accuse the liberal Christians of picking and choosing. Then you look at what evangelicals do; they do the same thing. And anybody who's going to take a text like that to be their guide will have to already start with a moral principle in order to know what to select from.
And I would say that more than half, maybe even 75 or 80% of the people who claim the Bible and the Quran and the Book of Mormon as their holy book and say, this is how I believe, have never even read it.
I mean, you are dead right.
It's the most popular, least read book in the world.
It's the most quoted least read book in the world. What if you took the Bible the way you did any other kind of literature, as human literature, some of which can have an incredible wisdom and some of which can be pretty stupid, and all in between?
They say that and I agree, that there are more morals and ethical lessons in Shakespeare than in the Bible, or at least good ones. We were talking about the Bible and atheism. So one good example of somebody who can speak fairly well for atheism and express the concepts that we have is an Englishman, Pat Condell. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, go ahead.
And he's very eloquent and very passionate about these things. He's very anti-Islamic at this particular point, but it's to be stressed that he's not against the people, he's against the dogma of Islam. Now,
speaking of Islam, I recently heard a Muslim in Minnesota speak about mosque-state separation.
In Minnesota?
In other words, we talk about church-state separation. He was saying we need to cut this support of the state supporting a religion, or they're using each other. And he came up with the view that others have had before him, that this is what is hurting both religion and the state.
I agree. And we have another caller. Welcome to Freethought Forum. Can we have a name or nickname?
This is JJ. From rural South Georgia.
Okay.
Go.
Well, welcome
South Georgia.
to Knoxville Show.
I used to sell books there. Go ahead. Please.
Do you have a comment or question?
Well, first off, I heard about your show, heard about it last night. I was watching a video of the Atheist Experience from Austin.
Yes. That was nice of them to mention our show, yes.
I would like to say that I appreciate what y'all are doing. As an atheist in a small town in South Georgia, actually living with a pastor, I appreciate the messages that you're getting out.
Well, thank you very much. And you heard about it from the Atheist Experience. That's great.
Yeah, met a lot of nice people in South Georgia years ago.
Have you got an atheist group down there that you meet with like-minded souls with? I use the word souls lately.
As far as I know of, in my town, I have no like-minded souls.
Oh, okay. You might want to check with meetup.com, put in your zip code, look for the word atheist or freethinker or agnostic. You might be surprised. And if you don't have one, if you're not out of the closet, or if you are, then you might want to think about starting one. I started this one in Atheist Society of Knoxville in 2002. And the atheist experience out of Austin, Texas started with an ad in the paper.
May get to that point at some stage, but I don't really see it happening right now. Not in my town, at least. That would be putting myself on a hit list.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you very much for calling in and letting us know.
I also had a question. I watched the Republican debate last night, and I've been keeping up with politics thus far. How do you guys feel about religion and politics? Like the whole thing about campaigning, it seems to me, is that a candidate will say, I come out and basically say, I love Jesus more than this person does. Right. And what do you guys think about that?
Well, we're dead set against church-state entanglements.
We've talked pretty much at length on this.
We cannot talk about politics per se because this is a nonprofit television station, and as such, we have to stay away from politics. But we do certainly have opinions on when religion gets mixed up with politics. It pretty much takes away all the rights that you have, or at least has the basis of doing that.
Yeah, I had a conference once. It was an informal conference with some Muslims in my home many, many years ago. In fact, we stayed up until 5 in the morning. And they saw how important the First Amendment was.
No, very.
They could see. I said, you Muslims can do quite well in this country without having the state reinforcing your religion.
The biggest fear that they would have would from their own clan members.
Yes.
Their own society.
Well, that was the biggest fear that Christians had over the centuries, was fear of other Christians, unfortunately.
Right.
Not from atheists. There weren't that many atheists.
Yeah. No, the government, by its nature, has potential control over your person, your income, your jobs. If you violate any of their rules, they can take you and put you in jail. The church, if it had the power of the government, could actually arrest you for thought crimes. Not praying, not blasphemy, things like that. And that's when the power of the state would be absolute, when you get a church-state entanglement like it used to be, like in ancient England. And
in fact, that's basically, I think you could say, a major reason for the split between Protestants and Catholics in Europe.
That's awesome.
In that the 7 sacraments were in basic control of the priesthood. And therefore, your salvation and often getting a job and having social status was in the control of a power group, an elite group of priesthood.
Well, closer to home, that's why America was founded, to get away from the church-state entanglements of England.
So the Protestants came up with I think, is a notion of the priesthood of all believers, which pretty much did away with the priesthood as a group.
Right. So are you an angry atheist? Do you have anything that you'd like to bring out on this Angry Atheist show?
Basically, recently, I ran on hard times. I had to move back with my parents, and my dad is a Methodist pastor, and I was raised in the Church of God. So they do, my dad's done all the speaking in tongues stuff.
Yeah.
So he's one of those. And I've had a lot of discussions with him lately because it's getting that time, we're getting close to an election, and we start talking politics, and we move from politics to religion because, in his mind, they're very entwined, very closely entwined.
Sure.
But my main problem with it is that theists, at least down here, and it's mainly Christians that I deal with, they don't know about the Treaty of Tripoli in 1797, where they signed it saying this country was not founded on Christian values.
And that was a unanimous signature, motion by the Congress at that time.
Yeah, my dad likes to point out how there's prayers in the Senate and there's sprinklings of God throughout our documents that found in this country.
Right. Just because.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If someone says to you, and think about this, if someone of your relatives is ill and they say to you, someone says to you, I hope he gets well, I'll be praying for you. Now, I must admit, that does not make me angry.
No.
Does it make you angry?
I mean, there's a time and a place for everything. I mean, if it's a relative or someone that's sick, and if that brings them comfort, I don't feel that that's the time to be pointing out things like that.
Now, that's a good point. Okay.
In my opinion. But, I mean, if someone comes, like, to put something in my face, to, like...
Right.
Then that's
like
another
my parents make me go to church every Sunday morning. And, like, my dad, every once in a while, he knows that I'm an atheist. I'm out to them. I told them before I left for college. And
well, let me ask you this. When you were a child... look at it from, it occurred to me one day when I was growing up, I can't remember what age, that my parents were persons, you know.
Persons.
Now, think of this. Your parents are persons. Was it wrong of you, of your parents, from their point of view now, and then see if you can be objective, to take you to church?
From their point of view, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because from their point of view, they were doing what was best for me.
Okay,
From
now...
an objective point of view, yes.
Okay, well now, see, their motives would have been okay. You would agree?
Yes.
Okay. Did it do you an enormous amount of harm?
Kind of. Like,
But potentially it could.
Okay. Now, let me ask you. Let me ask
from
you.
adolescence onward, like I would have nightmares about falling into hell.
Okay. Now that I can understand. That's a cruel thing to do to kids.
Yeah.
Did you get any good out of it? Let's be see. Part of being a humanist is being honest. Did you get any good out of it?
I can see where maybe I gained a little bit of an understanding of a different point of view.
Okay.
That's really the only good I see that came from it. I didn't derive my morals from the Christian religion. I didn't gather anything else from it.
Did you meet
maybe a better understanding?
Did you meet any kind people in the church?
I wouldn't put that with the church. I've met kind people in the church. I've met horrible people in the church, and I've done the same outside the church. So I wouldn't put those together.
Okay. So I would think that regardless of what your belief is, you need a support group. Okay? And if you grow up in a view yourself, and you tend to raise your kids in this view maybe, yeah. and so the motives would be good.
Yeah, I've always thought that you don't need religion for that, though. There are other ways of having a support group, and the religion would be,
of course not.
Would not be, in my mind, of course, when you base something on 2,000-year-old ideology from the Bronze Age. There are other ways to do it, and better ways. So, well, thank you for your call. Did you?
Yeah. So basically, I don't want to get in the position that some fundamentalist Christians get in, that all those on the other side are immoral and they have no insights. And I don't want to be a fundamentalist atheist that says all those on another side have no insight in morals. I think that's equally naive.
Okay.
I think there are good Christians. That doesn't mean that I agree with them on all these things. Mm-hmm. It's just I think there are good Christians who do good things in their churches. They do some horrible things, especially when they get into politics.
Right. Okay. Did that
and some preachers would agree with me on that.
Your question and the comments?
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mainly wanted to call and say I'm glad that there's people in the South that are actually trying to get a word out.
There are.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your call.
South Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Okay, we've got... we haven't even got into the main document yet, and it's halfway through the show.
Let's go.
This is the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. This is Freethought Forum. It's kind of a way of station identification. This is the call-in show. You can call in, and we're discussing angry atheists and why atheists have every good reason to become or be angry. So we're about ready to get into the document that I brought along with me, which was Greta Christina's blog, Atheist and Anger. It's a very long, it's like 24 pages. We don't have time for all of this, but we'll get into a few of these things and talk about them. In the meantime, you're welcome to call in, 215-2288. Call in anytime. Joe, is there anything that you'd like to jump in on?
Well, what I would like to do is recommend an exceedingly good book. It's Jonathan Kirsch, K-I-R-S-C-H, God Against the Gods. And here is a book on monotheism and the cruelty that some versions of monotheism used over the centuries to persecute other believers because they believed either in another God or other gods.
And atheists, since we stand outside of that, all of that makes us angry. Why would we need something like that to persecute our fellow man?
Yeah,
that's true.
In other words, why would you persecute someone who believes something different from you if that belief is not translated into denying you some of your own rights?
Right, human rights.
Human right, basic human rights.
Now, that's one of the things about the Bible. You know, you see so many Christians holding up the Bible and say, this is the basis for America. You know, America was based on Christian values. One thing you don't see much in the Bible is human rights, especially women's rights, and especially the rights of subclass like slaves. I mean, there's all kinds. There's no such thing in the Bible as the human having certain inalienable rights, even though the preamble to the Constitution says that it's given by our Creator. The Creator not necessarily the one of the Bible. There are many deists in the founding fathers that did not follow Christianity, and although they did believe in God, they were not Christians.
Yeah, in fact, there is a little epistle in the New Testament in which Paul is writing a letter to a slave owner, sending his slave back to him. Now, to be fair to Paul, he's trying to tell the slave owner to treat him like a brother, but he is not saying slavery is immoral.
Right. Nowhere in the Bible does it say the institution of slavery is immoral. Even Jesus wouldn't go that far.
Well, I think you could say here, that's a kind of moral relativism.
That is.
That instead of saying, well, this is wrong for another human being to own another, Paul did have another notion. In Christ, there's neither slave nor free, which was a principle. He just simply didn't apply his own principle at this point.
Right. So getting back to Christina, Greta Christina's blog, and I'm quoting, I want to talk about atheists and anger. This has been a hard piece to write, and it may be a hard one to read. I'm going to be polite and good-tempered as I usually am in this blog, but this piece is about anger. And for once, I'm going to, get angry myself. But I think it's important. One of the most common criticisms lobbed against the newly vocal atheist community is, why are you so angry? So I want to talk about why atheists are angry. Our anger is valid, valuable, and necessary. And 3, why it is completely messed up to try to take our anger away from us. Excuse me. So let's get started. Why are we angry? Or rather, because this is my blog and I don't presume to speak for all atheists, why I am angry. I'll just start with the first one. I am angry that according to a recent Gallup poll, only 45% of Americans would vote for an atheist for president. That's a good reason to be angry.
Yeah, that is bigotry.
And by extension, a senator, a governor, a mayor,
a school board member.
Right. Simply because we don't believe in your God. Remember, you don't believe in all the other gods, but no matter which religion you're in, it's because we don't believe in your God is why you wouldn't want us to be in public office. Did you want to?
Well, it is interesting. In this country, we did fight the battle of whether a Catholic could be elected, and become a president. And what was interesting is that John Kennedy went to Houston and talked to a Baptist group and talked basically about church-state separation, which Baptist leaders used to believe in until all of these mega church and television guys came in and hijacked the Baptist tradition, in my opinion.
So true.
And it was interesting. The question came up: could a Mormon be a president? And now that's been debated somewhat. Now the question is, can an atheist be a president? And the question depends on his politics and what his views are. It ought to be anyhow.
True.
But unfortunately, some people believe. Why do some people think an atheist should not be in political office? I think because they have bought the fabrication that if you're an atheist, you can't be moral or have no basis for morality. And I think people simply buy. That's bearing false witness. That's a lie. And then to let that lie get into their...
It's what you call in logic a straw man argument. You throw things into a collection of things that you consider to be what you're arguing against, like atheists are baby killing, demon worshiping,
which, by the way,
or whatever, and then you attack that. Because they are that, we don't want to have anything to do with them. So what I've done is created a straw man and then attacked the straw man, which is not attacking atheists, because it's kind of like a card trick. They've shuffled the entities together.
Well, they did.
Yeah.
In fact, that was done against the Jews. And in fact, the Nazi movement against the Jews did not just come overnight.
No,
that was in Europe and Russia for centuries.
And a lot of it could be pointed right back to the Bible, where the Bible says that Jesus' blood is on the Jews, and they say we take it on ourselves. Now, would they actually say that?
It's in the Gospel of Matthew.
It's in the Bible where the Christians have put the blood on them and saying that they accepted them themselves.
Blood on us and on our...
How many Jews have died in the course of the last 2,000 years because of this particular instance in the Bible? Going on with what Greta has to say, she says, I'm angry that Christians still say smug, sanctimonious things like there are no atheists in foxholes. You know that you're not seeing atheists in foxholes because believers are threatening to shoot them if they come out. What was the name of that atheist who was recently killed that was a very famous
I know what you're
football player.
Yeah.
Tillman, he was an out atheist in the military. In the middle of a firefight, he was shot, and it was friendly fire. So, would you, if you were an atheist and you were in the Army or the Marines or any firefighting area, would you come out? It's not very safe. But some, even in spite of that, do come out, and they write to our organizations and tell us about the problems that they have in the military. I'm angry that atheist soldiers in the U.S. Armed Forces have had prayer ceremonies pressured on them and atheist meetings broken up by Christian superior officers in direct violation of the First Amendment. Another reason to be angry. The military is not a very friendly place for an unbeliever. George Herbert Walker Bush, this is George W.'s father. She says, I'm angry that the 41st President of the United States said of atheists in my lifetime that he didn't know that atheists should be regarded as citizens, nor should they be regarded as patriotic. This is one nation under God.
Now, that particular Bush wasn't noted for being very religious.
No.
He was a politician.
But as a veteran myself, I very much resent that. Yes. I think it's a terrible thing to say to 10 to 15% of your population that you're elected to represent. To say that if they don't believe in my God, I don't consider them citizens. That's a terrible message to say. Did you have anything that you wanted to throw in? I'm kind of taking it over.
Well, the tradition has been, for monotheism in particular, to say since there's one God and He rules the universe, then the model has been of a Middle East tyrant ruling the universe. And therefore, in fact, one theologian says, whatever God does is good just because he does it.
Right.
Can you imagine what theologian would say? That was John Calvin.
Uh-huh. Well, that's the way many, and indeed most Christians will look at the Bible. They'll open it up, read some of the atrocities that are in the Bible, and say, well, it can't be bad. God did it. And that's against common sense, and it's against human morality.
Fortunately, in seminaries, the professors are teaching what's called, and this started in the 19th century, but you don't hear this from the pulpits very much, what's called biblical criticism.
Mm-hmm. No, you don't hear that from the pulpits.
And it's a shame that ministers are not teaching what they learn in their school of theology.
Right.
That seems to me dishonest.
It is.
You can understand why, because they're afraid of losing their jobs. Mm-hmm. But there's somewhere.
But where's the honesty that they?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
The truth and the honesty that they so blatantly tout as the purview of their religion. I'm angry that school boards all across the country are still, 82 years after the Scopes trial, having to spend time, money, and resources on the fight to have evolution taught in schools. School boards are not exactly loaded with time, money, and resources these days, but any of it that they spend fighting on the stupid fight is money that they're not spending on teaching our children.
One of the best criticisms I've read of this whole notion of kicking evolution out of the schools was in Baptist Today. A group of moderate Baptists said their view was, if you're going to have science, then it's got to be taught in the schools, and if that's evolution, then teach it.
That's science.
These are moderate Baptists.
What gets me is that why would they want to teach a religion in school when they have a perfectly good place to teach it, in church?
Yeah.
They don't want us to bring evolution to their church.
I don't think.
I mean, they would be outraged if we even suggested
really
something like that.
I think
they don't want it taught at all.
I think I'd like to call the bluff. I'd like to offer courses.
They say that they want all sides taught, except in church.
And they talked about critical thinking. This legislator up there north of you talked about critical thinking in the school. Why not? Then let's have courses
in church, though.
What if you say? What do you think about this? Having courses, elective courses in the public schools in world religions.
I think it's a good idea.
And do comparative analysis.
As long as you don't teach it as truth, you teach it for informational purposes, I think it's great. I haven't got a problem with that. Greta goes on, she says, I'm angry that women are dying of AIDS in Africa and South America because the Catholic Church has convinced them that using condoms makes baby Jesus cry. I'm angry that women are having septic abortions or being forced to have unwanted children that they do not resent. They resent and mistreat.
It's criminal behavior.
Because religious organizations have gotten laws passed by our secular government to make abortion illegal or inaccessible.
And in some cases, the priests have opposed even contraceptive information.
Right.
Which it seemed to me just being criminal behavior.
Right.
I mean, how heartless can people be?
Right. The one thing you really have to ask yourself about abortion is, you may be against it. I don't like abortion. I don't go out on weekends and tell people to have abortions. But the thing is, do you want it illegal? Do you want to force abortions into the back alley and into the criminal underworld? That's the problem. I mean, you may be against it. You may be pro-life. You may be saying there's no good reason to have an abortion. But if you change the law so that abortion is illegal, you're still going to have abortion, but you've just pushed it into the underworld and into dangerous territory.
Better if they're going to be anti-abortion, then they ought to be stronger on adoption.
Right, like we do today. Have it legal, have it controlled, have it government regulated. She goes on to say, I'm angry about what happened to Galileo. I'm angry that it took the Catholic Church till 1992 to apologize for it.
Yeah.
Only about 500 years too late.
Can you imagine being that late? Where were they?
Yeah. I get angry when advice columnists tell their troubled letter writers to talk to their priest or minister or rabbi. when there's absolutely no legal requirement that a religious leader have any sort of training in counseling or therapy. All they're going to do is make sure that you fall in line with their dogma. That's enough to get me angry. And she goes on to say, I get angry when religious leaders offer counseling advice to troubled people, not based on any evidence that does any good, and not on the work and people's psychology and lives, but on the basis of the religious dogma.
What she may not know is some of the seminaries now are having what's called pastoral counseling courses in which they study counseling. And in fact, I went to a theology school, and I had a psychologist.
Yes, but many don't.
Well, my point is,
it's more the exception than the rule.
Some of the preachers don't pay much attention to what they learn.
Right. But they take their certificate and go back.
Yeah, if they would pay more attention to what they learn in seminary, they could do a better job. Rather than this psychology teacher, who was a Christian, did not. He emphasized, don't go pumping scripture passages at them. Mm-hmm. First of all, learn to listen,
right? Which
is very difficult.
Find out what the problem actually is.
And try to help people.
And he says, I'm angry at preachers who tell women of their flock to submit to their husbands because it's the will of God, even if their husbands are beating them within an inch of their lives. A lot of this is happening in Islamic clan culture. The Quran actually tells them that it's right and proper to beat your wife if she needs it, or if you even think she needs it. And I can't imagine a situation where a woman would need beating. But
I remember when Mary and I were about to get married, I realized they still had love, honor, and obey. Now that comes from treating women as if they're children. And it occurred to me, I'm marrying a woman. And I said to the minister, can't we leave this out? And he said, he laughed because he saw
it. Oh, she had to say it too, didn't she?
I mean, that was obvious.
Okay.
But I thought, since then, that came from the view that women were, for one thing, women were pretty much programmed to marry in their early teens. When they didn't, they were not even adults yet. And men, usually much older, married these children and then had them starting to have children. So love, honor, and obey, that came out of that whole context. And you had a lot of preachers at that time, because they were part of that culture. They weren't prophets in the sense of criticizing the culture. They were simply going along with it. And it's the culture that changed, and then some of the preachers came along afterwards.
True. And she says, I'm angry that so many parents and religious leaders terrorize children who, A, have brains that are hardwired to trust adults and believe whatever they're told, and B, are very literal-minded with vivid, traumatizing stories of eternal burning and torture to ensure that they'll be too frightened to even question religion. I'm angrier when religious leaders explicitly tell children, and adults for that matter, that the very questioning of religion and the existence of hell is a dreadful sin.
Yes,
one that will guarantee them going to hell.
I've heard preachers say doubt was a sin. Mm-hmm. Now, even a dog can doubt. He will move in a direction and realize this might be a wrong direction. Go.
Excuse me. I'm angry that children get taught by religion to hate and fear their bodies, their sexuality. And I'm especially angry that female children get taught by religion to hate and fear their femaleness, and that homosexual children get taught by religion to hate and fear their homosexuality. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Any comments on?
Yeah. We do know that biologically we are ready for marriage before we are socially. And so it's imperative to teach, say, teenagers restraint. The same as you teach people to restrain their anger.
It's an educated restraint. And you don't want to say, don't do it.
Yeah, it's not. You give reasons why it's a restraint.
Then we have a call.
Yeah, go.
Okay. Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname?
Ralph.
Hello, Ralph. Welcome to the show.
I have a question for you guys. I listen to people, when I'd have a question about God, they'd say, you're not supposed to question God. Can I get you to elaborate on that just a little?
Okay, look at it from God's point of view. Don't you think? Let's suppose there were a God, okay? You don't think he could handle it? I would think it's preachers who can't handle the questions.
Who can't handle the questions.
Who claim to be speaking for a God.
I think I finally figured that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so true. Did you have anything that you were particularly angry?
I was just wanting to comment on that. My mother took me to Sunday school and all the way up. I was in church for years, and every time I'd have a question about that, they'd say, you're not supposed to question God.
Right.
You're
not supposed to think either.
I guess.
Thinking causes questions.
I remember hearing a woman say once,
I figured out I'm a grown man now and retired. I figured out I've been brainwashed all my life.
Yep. It's better late than never to come to the realization, though.
I don't know. It just opened up to me one day that I must be pretty stupid. You can't ask a question, you know. But I stayed silent for years.
There's a lot of pressure out there, a lot of peer pressure to keep you in line.
It's amazing how we project onto this notion of a God our own selves. And like God doesn't want you to ask questions. Well, that's a person who's insecure who doesn't want questions asked.
Right.
I've been told that by several preachers, though. You're not supposed to question God. They make you feel like you're, doubting Him.
What I like to do is say, I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning you.
That's what it really is.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times I've been told, that's God's business. I don't know.
Right. Mm-hmm. He works in mysterious ways, and His ways are not our ways, so we just have to do whatever the preacher tells you to do.
Isn't it interesting? A man will say, that's God's business, and then he starts talking as if he were God.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I watch you guys pretty regular, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, how did you find the show?
I've been watching you for I don't know how long.
Okay.
On TV.
All right. Great. Well, thank you for your call.
Okay. Thank you for my answer.
Sure. Bye-bye.
So if we have anybody there who has some good criticism, bring them in. We'd be glad to try to.
We'll have the phone lines open. About 5 more minutes to go.
Okay.
Greta says, I'm angry, enraged at the priests who molest children and tell them it's God's will. I'm enraged at the Catholic Church that consciously, deliberately, and repeatedly for years acted to protect priests who molest children, and consciously and deliberately acted to keep it a secret, placing the Church's reputation at a higher priority, for darn's sake. Mm-hmm. Children are not, placing the Church's reputation as a higher priority than children being molested. Mm-hmm. I am enraged that the Church is now trying to argue in court that protecting child molesting priests from persecution and so shuffling those priests from diocese to diocese so that they can molest children in a whole new community that doesn't yet suspect them is a constitutionally protected form of free religion expression.
It should be given.
Go think on that for a while.
It should be given pastoral counseling.
Yeah, right. They should be given some counseling. Prison counseling. I'm angry at 9/11. That was the only sentence on that one, which it's a true faith-based act. These people thought that they were doing what God wanted and assuring that they would get eternal bliss in an afterlife for doing it.
For killing people.
For killing people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I were of that religion, I would be angry for those people doing that and maligning my religion. You see what I'm getting at? Let's suppose a group of atheists had done that. We would be angry because we'd say...
And we would be speaking out against it. We would take the platform and say, that is not what we stand for.
And that's a good point, an incredibly good point. If you think this is wrong, then the Muslim leaders in this country, and many of them have, but we should have had more quicker.
And we should have had a international voice coming out saying this is wrong, and confirming that in the mosque, on whenever they go to,
and saying that's not our religion.
That's not what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we had just the opposite. The imams are telling their people that they do need to martyr themselves for their religion, and that's when it gets really bad.
Isn't that interesting? Kill somebody and call yourself a martyr.
Right. I am angry that Jerry Falwell blamed 9/11 and everything else in the world, every earthquake, hurricane, flood, on pagans, abortionists, feminists, gays, lesbians, ACLU, and the people for the American way. I am angry that the theology of our wrathful God exacting revenge against pagans and abortionists by sending radical Muslims to blow up a building full of secretaries and investment bankers. This was a theology held by a powerful, widely respected religious leader with millions of followers in America.
These modern Baptists I referred to look upon Jerry Falwell as a crazy crackpot.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guy was. I mean, he's dead now, but in my opinion,
mainly
very wicked person.
It mainly
many
preys
ways
on the old and infirm.
Yeah, it's just to make that kind of. He thought he was an Old Testament prophet, thinking that notion that anything horrible comes to your nation, that's a judgment of God. But that's such an old anthropomorphic.
Right.
A notion that, I mean, they even thought that storms were the work of God, and they had apparently a plague in Israel, and they had the notion that King David must have sinned, and God then sent punishment and wiped out, according to the text in the Bible, 70,000 people because of one tyrant's sin,
right?
And then attribute that all those deaths to God, making God worse than a tyrant himself. That's blasphemy, it seems to me.
Yeah. I get angry when religious leaders opportunistically use religion and people's trust and faith in religion to steal, cheat, lie, manipulate the political process, take sexual advantage of their followers, and generally behave like the scum of the earth. I get angry when it happens over and over and over again. But then they come down on the atheists for just not believing in God, is like we're the immoral ones.
Yeah, because you don't believe, not behavior, but belief.
She says she gets angry when people see this happening and still say that atheism is bad, because without religion, people would have no basis for morality or ethics. We're coming up on about a minute and a half of the show. is there anything you'd like to get into before we sign off?
Well, I'd like to mention something about miracles if we got time.
About 10 seconds before we get into it.
Well, one evangelical Reformed B.B. Warfield thought that should have no more miracles after the New Testament time. He realized enough is enough.
Okay. That's it. No more miracles. Okay, we've got about a minute to go. It's time to start wrapping things up. Get your pen and paper out if you'd like to write down our email address. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. You can write us emails at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. We do have a voicemail number up there. We will respond to you, hopefully, if we have in a timely manner.
We have a call coming in, but I don't think we'll have time, but I hope you'll call next time.
So, and you can see this show here most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. I'll try to read this last thing. I believe in America where the separation of church and state is absolute. This is John Kennedy. No Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference. And I couldn't agree more.
No.
Thank you for watching the show, and we'll be here.